going on, guys? I'm Joel Lorenzi, and I'm here with my boy Wilson Moore, and we're back with the Half Court Press podcast, aka the Joe Mauer podcast, and pretty soon to be the Dame Championship ring podcast.
There are a lot of directions we can go with that.
Yeah, we're still brainstorming, obviously, but man, after today's news, I don't know. This might be the Milwaukee Bucks agenda podcast. I don't know. Yeah. Big deal in the NBA today. Obviously, this isn't the NBA podcast, but it just seems like such a game-breaking trade that we kind of got to talk about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are no rules to this, are there?
Yeah. Dame to Milwaukee, obviously, in a blockbuster deal. I think it sends Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, some others, maybe a first rounder, and Tamani Kamara to Portland.
Yeah.
Who's the third team in the deal? I guess the Suns, right?
Yeah, Phoenix.
And I forget what they get, but who cares, right? Like this is everything. Dame to Milwaukee is everything, and it's just it feels like such a satisfying trade. Portland can go the direction they want to go in. They get some type of return. It's probably a better return than I imagined they get with the whole, Tyler Herro talks for months and
definitely better than they would have gotten from Miami.
Yeah, other trades or other teams that were reportedly rumored to be involved. It feels like they got the best out of this, man, and it's crazy because while I always felt like Dame would have been a perfect fit in Milwaukee, this team hadn't really been mentioned as a team throughout this whole, this process, and so it's like damn, not only one, I was driving and on the phone while trying to process Woj's tweet, so it took everything in me not to crash. And I've been watching the Fast and Furious movie, so I got some will, you know what I'm saying? But just trying to process, like, Milwaukee instantly not only satisfies Giannis and any idea he had via the New York Times and whoever else to leave after his contract is up. That's probably vanished midair now, because I know him and Dame have, in Chris Haynes' words, flirted with the idea of playing with each other, and now this is easily Giannis' best teammate ever. And
absolutely.
And this is Dame's best chance of getting the ring ever. So it'll be fun, man. It's just crazy to see this unfold in real time. I mean, for it to be to happen now on September 27th, I honestly didn't expect it, but it made my day.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. And I mean, that really feels like a perfect fit. Giannis gets a floor spacer that, he can, I don't know how many guys he's had like that, as point guards who can shoot like Lillard, and then a guy you can run the pick and roll with. It's just two stars who we'll see them play together, but it feels like on paper, at least, their skill sets really just mesh now, and they can take advantage of, I know we were just talking about this, an Eastern Conference that is not especially imposing.
Yeah, and you said it right. Like, from an on-court standpoint, Dame checks off a lot of boxes. Like, it's Giannis's probably best pick and roll mate ever. I'm not even probably.
I mean, what's Drew Holiday? No disrespect to Drew Holiday, but
man. Good luck in Portland, right? But this is the best shot creator he's ever played with, and this is because, of course, Dame, all the save for all the disrespect he gets, like, Dame is one of the better point guards of this generation and one of the better point guards of all time. This is easily the best shot creator Giannis has played with. Shot maker, clutch player. You could go down the list, and the possibilities with those two on the floor are infinite. I mean, I think back to that series with the Heat, and the timeline is completely different. I mean, maybe Giannis is sitting on another ring, especially because I thought that series was fluky considering his injuries and the amount of game planning they would have had to do for that Heat team just wasn't possible with the games he missed, and so. I just think about a new reality, a new world, and now I think there are endless possibilities for a guy who I think is still, at least in contention for best player in the world, and Giannis. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm gonna keep it quiet right now because Jokic obviously got his ring and whatever, but I think the talks will certainly ramp up now, right?
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fascinating.
Yeah, but back to college basketball.
Yeah, the thing people actually tune into this podcast for.
Yeah. And I think last time we talked, the schedules had not dropped yet, and I think they probably dropped like the day after. So even though we've written about them, we kind of want to, we've had time to chew on them, and we want to run through them. And I think it makes sense to start with Creighton, right? Creighton obviously expected to have a big year. The Big East is expected to have a big year, probably its biggest in a long time since short shorts were in, and ESPN was a baby company, right? Like, this is the Big East. The place it's in is it's remarkable, man. Like, you look back at documentaries and stuff, if you're young bulls like us who weren't around back then during the Cold War, right? So you knew and you heard of what the Big East was back in the day, and it feels like what it is now is almost reminiscent of that. It can be that. It's a power. People are excited for this league. It's got about 5 or 6 powerful teams in it. I mean, maybe Xavier, you take them out the mix now because of some of the injuries they've had. But I look down the line: Creighton, Villanova, UConn, Marquette, St. John's is the talk of the town, right? Like this league has powers, man, and Creighton is gonna have to face them all. And we look at the start of their conference schedule. They start with so they start. I think they start. It's some combination of Marquette and what is it? Villanova, because I think they flipped that at the end of the year too.
Yeah.
And so I think, you can make a case for those 2 weeks, and I think there's a week apart of each of those games, because one comes at Christmas break and then the other they got kind of like a bye week ish at the end of the season. I think you could make a case those are probably their 2 hardest combinations of games at any given time. And I know UConn's gonna be great and some of the other teams are going to be great, but I think we're seriously underrating Villanova. First of all, they're deep as hell, arguably the deepest team in this conference, even if they're not crazy top-heavy with talent. And then Marquette is Marquette, right? They brought back everybody to this team. They underwhelmed in the tournament, but they won the Big East title outright and the tournament for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a very deep league. I think it says a lot that you've got the defending national champ, UConn, who, arguably was not the best team in the conference throughout the regular season. Just some heavyweights, and that'll be a real test for Creighton. Just get thrown in the fire right at the beginning there.
Yeah, and UConn, like, to your point, like, they didn't look like the best team in the conference last year. And part of that was because the Big East was just that good. And I think we failed to realize that until March. And now it's like I think everybody's like there's an abundance of people on the Big East train, right? Like now people are in on the Big East. There's hype around it. I don't exactly know the details of the TV contracts because that's not even my expertise. But I gotta feel like this league, if it keeps going at this pace, it could elevate back to what it was, man. Yeah. And we could be talking about ESPN games or something because I think that's what this league's missing. Really, like no disrespect to Fox and CBS, man. But I mean, come on, this league this year deserves ESPN games, especially when you got conferences like the SEC that really football is king there. And those leagues, as much as you got some good recruiters in those leagues, like this is the league that's making it happen with basketball. And so I look through Creighton's schedule, and I think you got St. John's and Connecticut back to back in the middle of January. That's another tough combo of games. You got and this is part of the problem with their schedule, and I think why they probably got, if you consider playing certain teams at a certain date to affect the schedule. I know some people don't believe the idea, whatever. I believe in it simply because momentum is definitely a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, but I think Xavier being not as good as they were last year, not only because Sulo Boom is gone and the people they lost, but the season-ending injuries of Fremantle and Jerome Hunter, it really makes not just Creighton's schedule easier, but possibly everybody's schedule easier. And I know Sean Miller, I don't want to count him out, right? Like, he's a good coach. He could probably make something out of this really terrible hand. But as far as Creighton goes, like, I could see a stretch where they win, like, 9 straight games, man. Like, I'm looking at Seton Hall, Xavier, here for the pink out game, which is almost always a win. It was a bloodbath last year. We got DePaul, which DePaul needs to be relegated at this point, right? Butler, not far off from relegation. Providence, which is good. I like Kim English, Mizzou guy.
Oh, yeah, we all love Kim English.
We all love Kim English. Xavier, again. Georgetown, which is better than people I think are giving them credit for. I look at the roster; they're okay. There's a semblance of life there, right? Like especially from what Pat Ewing left behind.
Yeah, I don't know that we're ever gonna see like the Georgetown of a previous generation again, but there's something there.
Yeah, and I think like that too. Like I was thinking of the Georgetown days. We're going on a sidetrack here, but the Georgetown days where they were known for being the school for they were like they produced bigs. Like they always had a big. Dikembe, Alonzo Mourning, shit, Roy Hibbert, like they always had a tough big. And now it's like I don't know.
Greg Monroe.
Greg Monroe. How did I forget Greg Monroe? Pistons legend, right? And so they always turn him out, and now it's like I don't even know if there is a school that you could really say produces a certain position like that. I think Texas has done well over the last 10 years in terms of bigs, but not to really like Georgetown, the run Georgetown has. So you're right. I don't know if they ever get back to form, but I think they can get to an identity that Cooley was known for in Providence. And I think right now, for this being his first year, and you consider the turnover factor in college basketball, like they're better than what I would have thought. Like he brought some of his guys. He's got a couple top 100 recruits. Dontre Styles from North Carolina didn't get ticked last year, but can probably be a factor for them. Yeah. And so you consider a guy joining a job that was, I mean, obviously they had the resources, but how many people actually wanted to step into that situation from a coaching standpoint, right? Like, I can't imagine too many.
Yeah, I mean, to use a comparison, I think some of our listeners may or may not be familiar with. It's kind of similar, actually, I think, to Nebraska football, where it's this once powerful program that has really fallen in the past decade, but it remains an attractive option for coaches because it's like, hey, you can be the guy who brings this back to the glory days that it once was. So I think because of that, when a program has been good like that, I think there's always a small part that makes it just a little more of an attractive option. Maybe not for, an 18-year-old you're trying to get on campus, but for a coach who wants to be the one to turn it around to bring them back to the place they were before.
Right, and for what it's worth, it's not a football pod, but Nebraska in its heyday was probably better than Georgetown was in its heyday. But still, you're on the right track, and I think Georgetown, like, I don't know, man. Like, I think people see the resources, and that's why they have faith, and they still consider it. It's still probably a top half job in the league, and so they'll get there. And I think people are not giving them credit. Like, I'm gonna give like the same credit people give Patino just because he's Patino. And saying, oh, yeah, St. John's is going to be something, even though they got Iona's roster plus friends. Like, they got Soriano and Jordan Dingle. But, like, we're really in on them because of Patino, right? People should maybe be higher on Georgetown because of Cooley. Like, why is that disappearing? You know what I'm saying? So, Georgetown is maybe the blip in the road during that stretch. Maybe Providence, because I think that is in Providence. That's always a tough game. And then you got Butler again, good grief. And then it gets to Connecticut and St. John's again, right? Yeah. So I think that's like an 8 or 9 game stretch where Creighton could really rattle off wins. And they had a stretch like that last year, which they really needed. And I don't think that stretch was necessarily as easy as this appears. Yeah. But it was a stretch where they can get wins, they can get their seeding back up because Lord knows they needed it after that 6-game losing streak. So, I mean, this is being handed to them on a platter almost, right, compared to last year, which maybe you could argue they deserve in the world of basketball guys because of the way their non-conference fell and how much pressure they had to do work in the conference season so that they can get a solid seed that would match their potential. And then the toughest week, again, probably at the end of the season is Marquette and Villanova. So you got to be ready for that first week, right, where I don't even think people will be here, at least students wouldn't be here for that first matchup because I think that Villanova matchup's like closer to Christmas, and then Marquette is like New Year's, the day before New Year's. So those 2 weeks, while separate and while the same opponents, they're equally interesting. Yeah. Probably their hardest. And Marquette, I mean, they have history with these two teams for what it's worth. Like, I think Marquette, you could argue, is one of Creighton's better rivals, whether that's for good reason or not at this point. But that's what we're looking at with Creighton's schedule. Now, I want to hit Nebraska's schedule. Now, what do you see when you look at Nebraska's conference schedule?
My first impression when I saw Nebraska's schedule was, man, do they get punched in the mouth early. They begin the season at Minnesota, which that is not a particularly marquee game. Nebraska beat the Gophers twice last year. But from there, you got Michigan State, then a month break because the weird Big Ten schedule, followed by Indiana, Wisconsin, Purdue, Iowa. That is, of the first 5 games, for 6 games, 4 are against tournament teams from last year. Another one, Wisconsin, just missed the tournament. And you have probably the 2 favorites in the conference, Michigan State and Purdue, right away. That is a rough stretch to begin with. That also comes back, and makes for a slightly easier back end. They finish with Minnesota, Ohio State, Rutgers, and Michigan. Again, we've been over Minnesota. Ohio State was mediocre last year. Rutgers and Michigan are both coming off just brutal off seasons, so they have a chance to take a little momentum into the Big Ten tournament, which could be big if things go well this year and they have a chance to be kind of a tournament NCAA tournament bubble team. But it is going to be a tough start, and maybe that'll be beneficial. Every team responds differently to something like that, but just a really difficult first 3 or 4 weeks before things smooth out a little more.
Yeah. So you're not a Chris Holtmann guy, huh?
I mean, last year's Ohio State team was just, they started off well. They kind of ended a little flat. Bryce Sensabaugh is gone. I don't know.
Yeah. No, they're not. They're mid, and it's okay. And for what it's worth, like Holtmann was on the hot seat last year. He'll be on the hot seat again this year. They're probably gonna mock, Greg McDermott to Ohio State in the offseason. We're gonna start that cycle again. And Chris Holtmann probably won't keep his job after this.
It's not Thad Matta's Ohio State, and it hasn't been for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, sure. And no, you're right about the end of their schedule. I see a run here, and what's crazy is I remember sitting on the pod with Dirk, and we were talking about the end of Nebraska's conference schedule last year. And he was like, man, those games are tough. And granted, it was a tough slate, right, at the end of their – and they needed to win those games to try to have any semblance of hope to the tournament or anything like that. And they pulled off those games. So they won't have to work so hard this time. But I'm wondering I guess if they have to wait that long for momentum, though, you know what I'm saying? Like then what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like you're right. They come out the gate getting punched in the mouth, which – it's probably only right considering they got Duquesne and I mean Cal State Fullerton. Well, Cal State Fullerton is better than Duquesne. They got Duquesne and Stony Brook in their non-conference. So like you probably want to get punched in the mouth at some point, right?
Yeah.
And I can't say I'm mad at them for the Stony Brooks and Duquesnes of the world after the way they scheduled last year.
They overscheduled a little bit last year.
Overscheduled, which didn't make sense because Fred was already relatively probably on the hot seat And to get that bowl with the non-conference, like, hey, like you play in the Big Ten, right? You're not good in the Big Ten, and not like the Big Ten is just okay. We're not gonna lie, the Big Ten is a good league.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to get real in March, they haven't beaten the allegations, right? So, but even with that being said, Nebraska hasn't been good in the Big Ten. You need that is your guaranteed punch in the mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for the momentum there, but if they have to wait to the last 5 games of the season to get that, I mean, that's tough.
I mean,
no?
and for what it's worth, those aren't the only winnable games, but I just think it's kind of a weird front and backloaded schedule for Nebraska.
Yeah, and kind of like Creighton, and everybody isn't that fortunate with the Creighton schedule, and I guess the way the bottom of the league looks, but. Stringing games together does matter. Whether that's you go road here, home, road there. Stringing games together does matter in the grand scheme of things and swinging momentum.
Yeah.
And so we obviously watched practice yesterday. Each of us. He was in Lincoln. I was in Omaha, and we saw some things. Maybe not eye-jumping things for Wilson.
Not the same things.
Yeah, we did not see the same thing. Yeah. Wilson was in there probably 30 minutes.
Yeah, I wasn't able to see any 5-on-5, which that's a big piece, but you were.
Yeah, not the case with me. Creighton is pretty open about that stuff. So we saw a lot, and I've heard whispers and rumblings of certain guys throughout the summer, but all that stuff changes. Like I remember when Trout first got here, like people were saying, "Oh, he was shooting 80% in practice," and then you see him in the Bahamas, and it's like, well. Can't really move like that. Like if that's the punk fake, like hey, we might need to get some more moves in his bag. But yesterday I was surprised with Isaac, and this is why you can only take the rumblings and whispers with a grain of salt. Because I saw Isaac yesterday, and I don't know where this ranked among his days of practice, but it looked like his best day in the uniform if I had to guess. I mean, from how he looked in the Bahamas, he played down to his matchup size sometimes, even less than that. He seemed like a mouse around the rim at times.
Yeah.
Missed bunnies, missed boards. I think his best asset right now is his jumper at his size and the fluidity in the jump shot, and he wasn't too consistent there in the Bahamas. And so now, I mean, yesterday, for what it's worth, it was one day of practice, but he looked good spotting up. The jumper looks clean, which is, I think, the first and foremost priority. Like that should be a given, right? And then I think the movement was he moved better. I don't know if it's moved the meter yet, or it's moved from being one of his weaknesses, but he moved just well enough. I think he was good enough on the boards. He played up to his size, and that's with Brock Weiss down there, who's looked physical in some of these practices. That's with Fred King down there, who is a physical specimen, and that's with Ryan Kalkbrenner, who is 7'1", probably 7'2", depending on who you ask. And so he played up to his size and what he should be. So I was impressed with him for sure. I guess what were you impressed with Nebraska?
Well, I think the first person who really made my eyes pop was the freshman Matarchap. He was a late addition to the class this summer from Senegal, and from what I was told, what I had heard, he's real athletic, kind of a project, but you see him in person and like his body is there. Like he does not have any of the skinniness that freshmen often do. He is a well-built dude, and everyone, Fred, players who talked to have talked about how just freakishly athletic he is, and he looks the part. He is, by all indications, a guy who can step in and protect the rim right now.
Sure.
Offensively, we saw a lot of shooting drills. His jump, he seems to be a little more of a work in progress. His jump shot was not especially, fluid, not great mechanically, but he was enough to be a real intriguing piece from what we saw. A lot of, again, we didn't see 5-on-5, but a lot of pace and a lot of shooting was what we saw yesterday, and he looks like a guy who can run the floor. And the other thing is, I think this is both based on yesterday and just the personnel. I think we're going to see a little more three-point shooting from Nebraska this year. I think they have the personnel for it. We can get more into this in a little bit, but the addition of Rink Mast and Bryce Williams, I think they have a few more guys who can shoot the ball, and we saw some of that yesterday in the half hour we were able to watch.
So give me a percentage per game.
Okay.
And not wishful thinking either. A real percentage that we could hold Nebraska to. A fair expectation of what level of efficiency they'll have from three.
Okay.
Because it hasn't been pretty in recent years.
They were 31 or 32 last year. I think 35. Is that?
That's kind of up there, is it not? That's up there.
Yeah.
That might be up there. I don't know.
I don't know. That feels
I think 34 is a safer bet.
34. Okay, I won't argue with you on 34.
Let's make the over-under. I'm not a betting man. Let's make the over-under 34.
Okay.
34. That seems like a fair expectation.
Yeah.
It's not much, but it is up there compared to what Nebraska has been. And for what it's worth, Creighton wasn't great 2 years ago either in that department. But, I mean, from what I'm seeing, and obviously people are going to talk about the shooting with this Creighton team, you subtract Nemhard, who people felt was, Creighton's offense took a hit there because, at a certain point, people started going under on screens with Nemhard, and while he could hit in the half court, spotting up and from the corners, and then with Kaluma, there were some games that they just wouldn't guard Art. I think back to that Nebraska game more than anything, they literally would probably go to the opposite corner of him if they felt the need, and it got ugly. So now people are looking at Trout, people are looking at Miller. People are looking at Ashworth. Ashworth is the talk of the town, right? If you look at the Almanac, which is not my Bible, they got Ashworth at 57, best player in the country, which maybe a little overzealous. I don't know. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But I think I only say overzealous because I look at the rankings of the rest of the Big East players. Somebody assembled the whole – I don't have the Almanac, but somebody assembled the rankings of the Big East players in the top 100 based on the Almanac's order. I think I saw Cam Jones at like 79 or 82 or something like that. I'm not saying Cam Jones is better than Ashford for this team, right? But Cam Jones was a dog last year, man. That's a all Big East second team player, bro. Is Steven Ashworth all Big East second team? I don't know, man. In this climate, I don't know, and I don't know if Cam Jones is this year in this climate. Maybe he is. I liked him last year. I voted for him second team last year. I think him and Trey Alexander. But man, Cam Jones is a dog. That empty side pick and roll with Osa Ighodaro between him and Kolek was like, it was unguardable. I mean, Creighton knows that more than anybody. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is Ashworth, while we haven't exactly...
Yeah, how did we get here? Yeah.
We're talking about the almanac and it not being our Bible, right? And Ashworth shooting and the added shooting, which is supposed to change, what people feel like they missed with Nembhard. While we talked about this last time, I still think they'll miss Nembhard for sure.
Yeah.
But Ashworth is gonna unlock some different things, not just for this offense, but I think for Trey Alexander. I think Trey Alexander is gonna have to take another step, and maybe this is kind of by force, just by design, because Ashworth is so good off the ball and it's kind of meant to, not just come off screens, but be an off-ball mover, and when he's not on the ball, not to be sitting there at half court like Trae Young or some shit like that, right? Like Trey Alexander will be forced to, as much as he wanted to make that leap as a first option, as a combo guard, as a ball handler, like he'll have to make that leap. It's not a choice that we'll usher you along and we'll see how you do throughout the season. Like he's gonna have to, especially with the way that Ashworth is gonna defer compared to Nembhard, and so I think it makes for an interesting case, and I think we're in line to see that if I had to be the guest, because Trey Alexander yesterday, I don't know if you saw the dunk on Creighton's social media.
I think I saw it on Twitter, yeah.
But I tweeted that he slammed the shit out of the ball, and I think that resonated with a lot of people, especially when they saw the clip. And I don't think the clip did it justice. No shade to the videographer, my guy Andrew, but I think the angle and everything, like you just had to be there on those seats on the side to see him rock the rim. I mean, it echoed off the walls. JTT, who was under the rim, caught the worst of it, right? And a year ago, Trey Alexander not only wasn't getting up like that, but he wasn't even thought about slamming something like that, let alone put it down, right? And so now you're seeing him. I thought he wasn't even high enough to put it down. But now you're seeing him get to that rim. You saw him bully that Lithuanian kid in the Bahamas for 14 free throws, whatever that was about. Like, that was uncalled for, right? 14 free throws. He's getting to the rim. He's putting pressure on the rim. And this is a necessary leap for a guy who wants to be Creighton's first option, right?
Yeah.
And so Creighton seems to be in good hands. If you ask Greg McDermott, they're aiming for Big East championships. Obviously, everybody outside is counting on national championships, but that's about as diplomatic as Creighton and Greg McDermott will get. I mean, Greg McDermott's known, I think, now for the political answers, the politically correct answer. I mean, what was Fred saying yesterday?
Someone asked Fred if NCAA tournament was the expectation this year, and he said yes. And
do you agree?
I mean, why not? I think this Nebraska team is going to be better than they were last year for a couple of reasons. I think Fred really feels like he's found, they found kind of what they were looking for, that formula, in winning 6 of the last 8 games last season. And I think so they added guys, in the portal who can kind of fit what they were looking for, veterans who have been around, guys who can shoot the ball, rink mass. Bryce Williams, Josiah Alec didn't shoot particularly well last year, but he has throughout his career. So I think this is a team that has some talent. I think this is a team that can win some games. I'm giving a kind of diplomatic answer here too, but
doing your best Greg McDermott impression.
But no, I think this is a really fascinating team that I think could go a lot of different directions. They could do a lot of different lineups. Someone asked me on Twitter yesterday who I thought, the starting lineup would be, and I realized they could go a lot of different directions of, do they want to go big? Do they want to go small? Bryce Williams is a natural wing, but he's, 6'7", and they seem to kind of like him as a possible stretch 4. So, to sum up those last 30 seconds of thoughts, I think this is a team, wouldn't be shocked, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if, they won some games, maybe went on kind of a mini run in the middle of the season, raise some eyebrows, I could see that happening.
Sure. Now, you texted me something interesting about a week ago. Rink Mass said what?
Rink Mass did compare Jaron Boogie Coleman to Luka Doncic the other day.
Which is ridiculous, right? Because
yeah.
I mean, we watched Boogie in 4K at Mizzou.
Yeah.
And have seen clips from Ball State, right? Like, are we talking about the same Boogie Coleman?
In fairness, I don't think it's really fair to compare anyone to Luka Doncic.
This is true. And
yeah.
So what do you think he was aiming for with the comparison? Maybe the pace?
Yeah, he was referring to the pace and the way they move, more or less. Yeah, I don't think.
Which I'm not sure if that's a compliment. I think Luka pulls it off, but it's relatively sluggish, right? Like,
yeah,
he really plays to his own pace.
Yeah,
like really plays. To his own pace.
I would have to listen back to the clip, but he definitely was referring to the pace and maybe kind of the way they see the floor,
which is not true. Which is not true at all.
I don't know. I don't know if he was referring to that part. The pace definitely was there. I'd have to listen back to.
And that reminds me. That just gave me the craziest thought. And I think I actually got a text about this like 2 weeks ago. Because I just happened to be talking to our college editor, Brett Dawson.
Oh, love that.
And I remember during my days.
2 weeks in a row, there's been a mention of Brett Dawson in this
Is it really?
podcast.
What did we say last week?
We were talking about writing 2 gamers last week.
Right.
Okay. But yeah, anyway.
The world revolves around Brett Dawson, clearly. So I remember me and Tyler Hollins shared that beat. And I think Boogie Coleman was, maybe I was writing for Rivals.
It was the next year. Yeah, you're up.
Right. But I do remember being on the beat under Brett, and we used to, because all we knew was that, we knew college basketball, but what we really loved was the NBA. And I remember I didn't compare him to Shaq, but I put Jeremiah Tillman in the same sentence as Shaq. And Brett cooked me. He got on my ass, man. And that's exactly what the Rink Mass comp feels like. That's what it makes me think of, like comparing Jeremiah Tillman to Shaq. Maybe the way they're moving dudes around. Even then, Jeremiah Tillman was not Shaq, but he was on a good run back then. And so I maybe Rink Mass is channeling his inner me. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But I think we'll end there. I'm Joel Lorenzi for Wilson Moore. This is the Half Court Press podcast, excuse me. I'm so used to calling the Joe Mauer podcast. And we're going to have a new name next week. We'll catch y'all.